Alrighty, good evening, everyone. May I have a motion to reconvene into open session? Motion, Mr. Edwards, seconded by Dr. Siddiqui. All in favor? 5-0. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Dr. Steele, up to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Tamio. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We have a few things to share. Forward to the continued ceremonies as we close out the rest of the academic year. I also want to give a special thank you to Mrs. Fritsch, our assistant principal at the high school, for the outstanding job she did in organizing both our Memorial Day event and the Names Not Numbers presentation. Each event was another testament to the dedication we have as a community here in honoring the sacrifices people have made, not just here, but around the world. It's our responsibility to keep these memories and stories alive. So thank you to Mrs. Fritsch and the team. Our students have been given a wonderful opportunity during both events. Mr. McNamara and I had the pleasure of attending the valedictorian luncheon this year, hosted by the Suffolk County School Superintendents Association. Our valedictorian, Davin Lee, and his parents were among the honored guests. And this is an annual event where all valedictorians from across Suffolk County are honored, and it's a wonderful way to highlight our highest achieving students. And congrats to our girls flag football team. They played an outstanding game this past Saturday for the Long Island Championship this weekend versus Plain Edge. And although they didn't win, as Suffolk County champs, and just for being who they are as leaders, they are certainly champions in our book. They are a notable group, paving the way for many young girls to follow. So thank you to them. And that's our update for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Steele. Apologize, I got up. The audio is going in and out on the live stream, so just with the district clerk aware, so we can try to adjust that. Is all good? Okay. All right. Thank everyone for being here tonight. Before we get into residents' remarks, I do thank everyone for being here in attendance this evening. Obviously, we're here for the budget readoption, as the previous budget that we used, that went out to the community at 4.2 did not fail. It did not meet with voter approval. At about 54% approved the budget, but we did not get the 60% supermajority that was required in order to meet with success. So this evening, the Board of Education has tasked the administration to come back with a revised number, and we'll look at that when Ms. Dungle goes through the presentation. It'll show the reductions and what the suggested new levy amount would be. So at this time, though, prior to the presentation, we do have an opportunity for residents' remarks. If you'd like to address the Board of Education, we have time right now, and then once after the presentation as well. All right. With that, I will give my blurb. The Board of Education encourages all residents to attend its meetings, and at this section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves, state whether they are a resident of the Elwood School District, and any organization that represents the meeting. Comments related to the district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Board Policy 1230. Questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the Board of Education President. Public discussion of matters related to staff, students, or others in which their reputation, privacy, or right to due process could in some way be violated is strictly prohibited.
Hello. Hi, my name is Agapi Bell. I'm a resident and parent. So thank you for the handouts. My question is, I want to know if tonight we're going to know details about the cuts, the proposed cuts, specifically the 3.6 teaching positions that are in one of the slides as part of the proposed cut. Are you going to be telling us specifically what staff and departments that is?
Dr. Steele?
Sure, I can answer that. We do have options right at this point. So once we get clear direction from the board on the number that we're going with, we can certainly be more specific. However, we are going to share the options that we have this year
And that's by department or by specific teacher?
by department.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Pam Elfridge, parent. I have an additional follow-up question to that. Will we also find out what that reduction looks like to academic intervention services?
Same response. So we have multiple positions for the academic intervention services, particularly at the high school. And we will speak to what that number will look like once we get a definite number that we're going out with.
Thank you.
As stated previously, there'll be a second residential mark after the presentation. Seeing all the residential marks prior, let's double vote, if you will. So our presentation of the readoption.
Thank you, Mr. Tamio. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Mr. Tamio mentioned, we're here to talk about the revised budget for adoption, as the previous one did not meet the voter approval. So we'll be providing an update on the 25-26 budget. The proposed budget presented to the voters on May 20th at the annual budget vote included a tax levy of 4.2%, which required 60% passing rate as it exceeded our cap of 1.29%. The result of said budget resulted in a defeated budget with only 54.19% of voters' support. And the reason it failed again is because we did not meet that 60% voter approval. Our options now, we have three separate options. The board can propose adopting the same budget that was presented on May 20th. They can adopt a modified budget, or they can immediately adopt a contingency budget. If they were to go to contingency budget, this would require a 0% tax levy for the next school year, and we would require the district to make additional reductions to our expenditures of $2.2 million. This is just an overview of the options I just discussed. On the left, you see our defeated budget was roughly $79 million with a tax levy of 4.2%. One of the alternate budgets we're considering is a 2.64% increase, which would also be piercing the cap. The tax cap compliant budget, which is a $77 million, would bring us down to our cap of 1.29% with additional reductions of 1.5 million. And then the contingency budget, as I just spoke about, with reductions totaling 2.2 million. So, within the past week or so, after careful consideration, meeting with all stakeholders within the district, our administrative team, Dr. Steele, we are recommending a budget that would include a tax levy of 2.64%. This budget was developed by making additional reductions from the 4.2%, totaling $829,000. That brings our total amount of reductions made throughout the entire budget process to roughly $1.9 million. And just to go over these positions once again, the first round of positions we spoke about, I believe, was back in February or March, totaled roughly $414,000. And again, we'll go into more detail about this as we move forward. Then, in order for us to meet the 4.2% proposed budget, we made additional reductions totaling $690,000. And since that budget has failed, we went on now to make additional recommendations for reductions that total an additional $829,000, which would bring our total reductions to $1.9 million, again, throughout this entire budget process. Now, I know Dr. Steele wants to speak to some of these reductions and how they will affect our schools.
So when speaking about the additional reductions, which actually is addressing the question that you previously asked, we were looking at possibly hiring for some elementary positions. And through attrition, we were able to fill some of those positions. However, it is at a cost in some other areas. So where we'll see a reduction is in a librarian, where one of our librarians will be shared between the middle school and the high school, but the librarian that we would pull would be able to fill one of those vacant elementary teaching positions. So librarian will be shared. We've also going to pull or eliminate the technology integration specialist, which is a teacher who's also elementary certified, and she will be able to be moved into a teaching position. So we're losing in one area, but filling a teaching position. And the other point positions that we're looking at, last time we talked about going down class sizes in the elementary class and doing some movement in the secondary level. Those are point positions that we're also able to fill by moving people around. However, that does result in, we talked about last time, a slight increase in class sizes, and maybe a collapsing of a class where there might not be as much enrollment as others. So while we're able to save positions, we are seeing reductions in some areas because of that. And the other reductions are really across the board, looking at every area, every unit for options for reducing in those areas.
Thank you. And this is just a summary of the previous slide, having all three reductions combined into one slide, again, just to represent the 1.9 million. As you can see, we're looking at 1.3 administrative positions, a total of 7.6 teaching positions, and as Dr. Steele just mentioned, that is mostly or really through attrition. So we had 10 teachers retiring this year, so we're able to increase class size at the elementary level and collapse some of the other classrooms. And again, across the board, paraprofessionals, clerical, custodial, we're looking at reducing security staff, academic intervention services, which I know someone had just asked about. We currently have 5 academic AAS tutors at the secondary level. This would be removing one of those positions. We're looking at reductions in our co-curricular clubs, some of the smaller clubs that do not have high attendance throughout the district. Professional development lines we looked at early on, as well as overtime, some of our basic contractual costs, and district-wide equipment, materials, and supplies. We were able to trim back some of our transportation expenses based on actual use, and each position that we eliminate does come with a reduction in related benefits as well. So this is what the new revenue looks like. And the tax levy is 2.64%, roughly $54.5 million. Our state aid, again, has not changed since the 4.2%. I did actually want to just touch base on this data. I've gotten a lot of questions from the community regarding our state aid increase. There are people who are looking at the website to try to figure out what our actual increase is. I just want to pull up the website to share that. So this is our current 24-25 aid, and then we have our 25-26 aid here, and you can see on the bottom, our total increase from year to year is $557,000. There are some people who are adding these two numbers together to come up with roughly $700,000, but that is not accurate. Our actual increase is $557,000. However, that is what is proposed by New York State. When we develop the budget, we don't always take that specific number. We have to take into account our actual expenditures for two of those categories. Both our BOCES aid and our transportation aid is based on what we're actually spending in this current school year. So we always reduce the numbers that the state is proposing because they're proposing the maximum if we were to spend every dollar that was in that particular budget line. So we do make small adjustments when we propose the revenue side of the budget for state aid. That's how part of being diligent as far as the state aid is concerned. We don't want to overestimate what our state aid is going to be, because then we would have a shortfall in the following school year. Additional categories, our reserves and fund balance. We've been speaking about this we speak about it every budget, but both of these categories really represent our, to make it simple, I guess, our savings account. Our reserves account, we have monies put aside to spend on specific expenditures. This $1.3 million represents $800,000 coming out of our employees retirement system fund and $500,000 out of the teachers retirement system fund, and that helps cover the expenditure costs on the expenditure side of the budget for our actual pension costs for our employees. They have to be, each reserve has to be spent in a specific category, so we're pulling money from two of reserves to help offset the deficit that we have on the revenue side of the budget. Additionally, we're doing the same thing with our fund balance. The fund balance is similar to reserve, except it's not specific for a certain expenditure. You can use it really for any expenditure. But again, those two categories, it's roughly $3.8 million, help fill the deficit that we have in the revenue side. If we did not have these two line items here, we'd be looking at an additional $3.8 million in cuts. So this is a tool that all school districts use to help fund their budget. So we have been, over the last few years, been trying to limit what we're spending, because as we spend it, the balances are getting lower and lower, and if we don't have them in the future, we're going to be having a much bigger issue when we don't have that money to fill the deficit. Again, this is a slide about the state aid that I was just speaking to. Our total proposal, the state is recommending or anticipating $550,000 increase, and we're budgeting roughly $275,000. This pie represents the different portions of the revenue distribution. As you can imagine, the largest pie piece here is the tax revenue that comes from the residents. Again, Elwood is somewhat unique, not completely, but most of our revenue, roughly 70 to 72%, comes from our taxpayers. This is the expenditure side of the budget. General support is really our administrative costs, not specifically administration as in staff members. It's administration of the school district. It includes salaries for district office, as well as our contractual obligations for legal, for auditing services, insurance services such as our umbrella insurance, our liability insurance. All of those things are within general support. Instruction is the teaching, specifically classroom-related expenses for all of our staff, and included in each of these lines, it's salaries, it's contractual, materials and supplies, equipment, everything that's related to that particular area of the budget falls within this total. Transportation, self-explanatory, as is benefits. That's our benefits for our employees, pension costs, medical insurance, workers' compensation, unemployment, those all fall within the benefits category. Our debt service is the money we still owe on our outstanding bonds. And interfund transfers is money that comes out of the general fund to help support our federal program. We have federal fund monies that we get from the government, but we only receive roughly an 80% portion of that. So the general fund offsets the other 20%. And also included in here is roughly $1 million to be transferred to the capital fund to help pay for replacement roof at the James H. Boyd Auditorium. And I'll speak further to that in upcoming slides. Again, just another pie chart to reflect the different portions of the budget, and the largest pie piece that you see here is directly related to instruction. Some important notes to point out. Reductions, as I mentioned, totaling $1.9 million. Included in the budget is year 5 of a 5-year transportation contract, as well as year 1 of our literacy program. And as I just mentioned, there's an interfund transfer for capital to help pay for the cost of replacing failing roof at James H. Boyd. And we just have some pictures here to kind of show you what's happening, specifically on the interior of the building because of the damage that's coming from the Boyd roof. And again, that's becoming a safety and health issue, so we're trying to get that done sooner rather than later. Just to follow up on the contingent budget. So June 17th, the budget revote requires a supermajority once again, as the proposed levy of 2.64 is still above the allowable tax cap. If the proposed budget does not meet the board of approval, the Board of Education must adopt a contingent budget. And a contingent budget would be roughly $77 million and require us to make additional cuts from what we just presented of $1.4 million. It would really devastating to the program. As far as a contingent budget is concerned, New York State dictates what you can and cannot have in a contingent budget, and essentially the emphasis is on actual educational program and preserving property, health, and safety for all students and staff, while non-contingent items are subject to reduction. Non-contingent items are mostly equipment, things that have to do with our capital side or our buildings and ground program, as well as some non-mandated expenses like materials and supplies. Athletics is not considered ordinary contingent, so there are many things that would be on the table if, in fact, the budget was to fail next week, or on the 17th, I should say, not next week. Speaking to budget options or reductions at the contingent budget, these are just some of the items that would be on the table. We're looking at additional administration elimination, additional AIS tutors, our music program in grades 3 to 5, additional teaching positions, teaching assistant positions, more co-curricular clubs. You can see sports. Again, like I was saying, it would be a devastating cuts to all programs across the board. And also to note, if we were to go to a contingent budget, we would have to eliminate the use of facilities from outside groups, with the exception when there is no cost to the district, but we don't really have any. Each of the groups who use our facilities, there is always a cost involved. But I just wanted to note that because I know we do have many groups that do use our schools for many different reasons. Regarding the tax impact at 2.64%, we've had the tax calculator online, and it has not yet been updated because we're waiting for a new number. But based on the numbers that we do have, if you have an assessed value of roughly $3,500, your monthly increase at 2.64 would be roughly $12 a month. Again, you can see for yourself, these different values up here, $2,500, $3,150, $5,000. If you use the tax calculator online, you just need your assessed value. You would enter that and then plug it into the calculator, and it would tell you what your estimated monthly increase is for next school year based on the 2.64. Actually, I'll just bring that website up in case someone's not familiar with this. And here on the budget finance page is the tax calculator, so again, you can enter your assessed value. Hit estimate school tax, and it spits out what your monthly tax increase would be. And again, this, right now, the formula is based on the 4.2% because we don't have a new number yet. But anyone, again, if you have your assessed value, you can look at your tax bill. If you don't have your tax bill, you can go to the town of Huntington and obtain it there. But you can obtain it online and try to figure out what your estimated tax increase would be per month, because I think it's important that people understand that. Moving on. Speaking about the important dates that are coming up, tonight obviously is our budget adoption. A week from tonight, June 9th, we have the budget hearing, again here at the Elwood Middle School at 7:30 p.m. That Wednesday, then, we're having a open forum, not a board meeting setting, an open forum for anyone to the community to come. Dr. Steele and I will be presenting the budget and having a Q&A session for anyone who needs information about the budget. And then, more importantly, June 17th is the budget revote at the Elwood Middle School cafeteria, and polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. That concludes my presentation.
Ms. Duncan, thank you very much, appreciate that. We have the opportunity as a board now to discuss as far as where we want to go with the levy amount, and then the residential remarks comes after that. I think that's counterproductive and counterintuitive, so I think I'd like, if the board is okay, I have permission to open it back up prior to residential remarks, and everybody can address Ms. Duncan prior to the board adoption and ask questions directly prior to the board having that conversation. So I will open residential remarks back up if anybody's interested in addressing the board prior to us having our conversation in regards, or asking Ms. Duncan any questions. Do we have to vote on that, Ms. Marks? I'm going out of order. Do we have to vote on that? No. Procedurally accurate.
Hi, Pam Elfridge, parent. I just have a couple of additional questions. On earlier budget presentations, BOCES was on there as a cut, but I see it's not on there today. So does that mean BOCES is included in this budget?
I believe, let me just go back, sorry. Yes, some of the proposed reductions we were looking at was the Long Island High School of Arts for the BOCES program, and that is something that we have not gotten to yet, as far as the reduction is concerned.
So we're not sure, it's still a question.
In the budget I'm proposing, it is not one of the options I looked at at the current time. But again, this is all open for discussion. Ultimately, the recommendation will come from the superintendent.
And in the budget that you're proposing, is unified sports still in there, or is that?
Yes.
Out? Okay. And the implementation of artificial intelligence, that new rollout, is that also still in the budget?
Yes, at this time, yeah. We haven't made any technology reductions.
Okay. One last question. You mentioned class sizes in Boyd and Harley. What about class sizes in the middle school and high school?
At this time, we're not seeing any major, increase. Again, there might be a slight increase, a couple of kids here and there, but it really depends on the classes that we are collapsing. But as of right now, we're still average. We're fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, parents, taxpayer. Just a couple of thoughts as going through this. The admin director position that is listed in there,
Could you elaborate on what that is? I mean, this is something that the community has spoken very loudly about prior to the last budget, is us being admin heavy. That's their thought process anyway. What would that position entail? In an effort to not wind up in a contingency budget, you know?
Well, at this time, we have, we're looking at all of the positions, and we're talking about every department. But what would happen with any one of the admin positions is that the work would still be there. So the work would ultimately have to be divided among the people that are going to remain. So all of the work that's done, I know there's a perception out there that we are admin heavy, but compared to other districts, they may have people in positions that we don't have, like department chairs or teacher coordinators within their buildings. Here in Elwood, we have the directors and our assistant principals that take on a lot of that load. So we are looking at all these positions carefully, but any one of them that does get eliminated, the work doesn't go away with the person. The work has to get divided among the people that are here.
I think to further answer your question as far as the position, the Board of Education is going to adopt the levy amount, and then from there, we're going to have to figure out which position would be cut. At this point in time, we have to figure out where we're going to adopt the budget at, and back into that number to see which position would be that 0.5 reduction.
I'm just saying, because the term optics got used a lot, right, with the last budget, and you don't want to wind up at the contingency budget, you know, so it is sort of backwards way what you're saying, I get to that point, but I understand. Another thought was, would we entertain sponsorship opportunities at all as a way to raise revenue on the fields or I don't know, shirts or teams or, I mean, there's so many ways to do that. Is that something that Elwood would consider?
The Board of Education for many years has tried to entertain that. We've been advised by council numerous times. We've approached the conversation often. We're short on revenue, right? So we have to be creative in ways to bring in additional revenue. Council has opined to not do that as far as legality reasons. For instance, if you put a major corporation up on the football scoreboard, and that organization does something that is not copacetic and goes, in a negative direction. Now we have a partnership with a corporation that we may not, want on our scoreboard. We engage into a contract with them, or it might just bring negative publicity to the district. So our attorneys have advised vehemently against that. The Board of Education is considering creative ways to try to bring in additional revenue through sponsorship opportunities.
Yeah, it's something that has worked successfully over at St. Anthony's High School,
So private school versus public school.
It's still reputation, it's still.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's why the disparity between the two is.
And then the other, just a thought was, with transportation, you're stuck in the 5-year contract, but are there ways that maybe we could save? And like, for example, for our kick line competitions, we get buses. Do we need buses? Can we parents drive? Would that save money? It's just one.
So the question is, as far as transportation goes with kick line, for instance, do we have to provide transportation to the team if the parents provide transportation anyway? They carpool, but they find means to not utilize transportation. As far as regular education goes, we're obligated and mandated to provide that transportation. As far as sporting events, field trips, things of that nature, correct me if I'm wrong, we could forego that and see that within that reduction of that $70,000. Part of that is, part of the equation is to figure out where we can cut that $70,000. That will come in means of transportation. It's not losing a bus route, we're mandated for that. It's in means of finding creative ways to reduce our expenses through transportation, field trips, sporting events, somewhere within that line to figure out a way to reduce $70,000.
Very good.
And then we are on our 5th year of the transportation contract. We saw a significant increase over 5 years. We've gone out for RFP. The current vendor was the only vendor to apply and get awarded the bid. So we are coming to conclusion after this year. So it is going to be the Board of Education Administration's job to put forth forth a proposal to them and the other vendors that go out, that's, staying within our budget. And I think that's kind of how we put back into the transportation contract going forward. Is we can't absorb more increases. We've already absorbed it over the last 5 years, so we have to do a great job negotiating that next contract, and hopefully other vendors put their hat in the ring. It's very hard with a monopoly within transportation within our surrounding district. There's no other transportation companies around here that are even willing to go out to RFP for us.
And this is something I genuinely don't know, but when the juniors and senior high school students are getting their cars and they're driving, is that factored into the equation of transportation? Or we kind of like sign off saying, you don't have to pick me up anymore, it's on me,
So they never lose their right to transportation. So that transportation is provided. The bus routes are created over the summer. They're offered to the community for September 1, and they run through the conclusion of the school year. So you don't drive to school and then we save the seat on the bus. It doesn't operate that way, unfortunately. We have some surrounding districts that have brought up some comments up at the state level. We've been part of legislative action, but the legislative committee with that as well, to maybe have an opportunity to have our parents say, I'm driving my kid 5 days a week. There is no bus my child's getting on. I opt out. And if we have 250 parents opt out, can we lose a bus route or 2 bus routes? So unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity yet, but it's a conversation through legislative action that ourselves and other school districts are advocating for.
Thank you.
Hello. Do I have to say my name again? Agassiz Bell, parent resident. If you could clarify the 3.6 additional teacher positions that are being reduced, I think there was already 4 that were being reduced with the initial. So there's 10 retirements. So is that, 7.6 that are just not being filled? So do I understand correctly that any teacher who would like to return in the fall will be returning in the fall?
Right, yeah, that is the reduction. So at this point, that is correct. We are, depending on the number that we go out, right? But at this time, these positions are being able to be filled the way we talked about.
Right, was that
Through attrition.
Through attrition.
Retirement and backfilling with people that are already here, yes.
That we currently had 10 retirements, teaching staff positions. We reduced it by 7.6, so we're still filling back 2.4 of those positions, and through that, we're being very creative. For instance, sharing that library between two buildings, so we're going to backfill those positions and utilize the percentage of one FTE full-time teacher in each of the buildings that they
So
represent.
my fear was the way the puzzle works, like where the needs were, you would have to fill here, but this amazing person would have to be cut here because of what they're certified for. So I just wanted to kind of confirm that current teachers who are on staff right now who would like to return in the fall are probably returning in the fall. So the reduction of 7.6 positions is going to be creatively maneuvered through the attrition process.
Correct.
To
And
cover.
that, you got it right, it is a puzzle.
Yeah.
Putting everybody
Yeah.
in the appropriate areas, the
Mhm.
certification areas, but yes, we're able to do that.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
Well, I give kudos to our principals, assistant principals, administrators who are working together through the buildings to coordinate and try to figure out where those savings could take place and where those creative solutions can arise from. So those administrators are trying to really put that puzzle together.
Good evening. Maureen Costanza, parent, community member. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and not any organization of which I am a part. I apologize for my prepared comments, but I am a terrible public speaker and do not want to ramble, so I'm going to read it, if that's okay. My family moved to Greenlawn and the Elwood School District because of its location and its excellent school system. I love living here. I love that we are a small district with only one building at each level, and that the graduating classes are small. I love that when I drive through the campus between Elwood Middle School and John Glenn High School, I can feel the atmosphere of school pride that is cultivated here. Our kids are nurtured by amazing staff at each building, and so many go on to amazing opportunities of all different kinds after graduating from John Glenn. Our kids win awards, our schools win awards. All of these things are the reasons why people move here. Because of all of this, I was so disappointed that our budget did not pass. I certainly understand the financial aspect of voting down the budget. Everything has become so incredibly expensive. I feel that pressure every day. However, I want to point out that if we have to go to a contingency budget, the cuts to programs I feel would be so extreme, and it scares me to think about how long it would take our small district to recover from that. Voting down the school budget hurts the kids, of course, but it also hurts our community. I hope that my fellow community members really consider this fact when we go to the revote on the 17th. Now, I have a daughter who has already graduated from Glenn, and I have a son who is about to finish 10th grade. Soon enough, my own kids will no longer be part of the schools. So any increases in class sizes, loss of programming, electives, sports, clubs, or any other extras will not affect my own children at that point. But I can promise parents of younger students in this district that even when that is the case, I will continue to want the best for the children in this community. I want to add that I appreciate everything that the board has done in this budget cycle. I have been sitting in this room as you've all discussed and labored over how to handle this difficult situation. I watched as you went back and forth with Ms. Dunkel to try to find the best path forward for our community. I would like to thank all of you for your due diligence in this process, and I know that you'll continue to make the same effort as we move toward the revote. I hope that my fellow community members will see the value in investing in our schools, which equates to investing in our community, but more importantly, and most importantly, it equates to investing in our families. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Christina Lowe, parent. My child's over there, so if she starts cheering me on, you'll know why. My question that I've had for you all today was primarily based on the question of revenue. When the budget went for a vote, how many weeks ago was it? 2 weeks ago, right? Facebook was like exploding with chatter, and I was just trying to, as you know, a parent of a boy student, just trying to make sense of what was going on. And revenue came up pretty often, and please approve me, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I understand with some trouble of us generating revenue is because we don't have a strong commercial base. So what you said before, Mr. Tomeo, is what exactly are those creative sponsorship opportunities that we're looking for in terms of generating revenue for our district in the future?
Things that we're currently doing and things that we're going to further investigate and see if we can bring in. So we have dance competitions, for instance. Years ago, we didn't open up our school districts to dance competitions. They destroyed the floors. Now we're requiring them to put down the Marley composite flooring, and we were willing to open up our facilities for dance competitions. So that's a way that we can bring in revenue. Sponsorships in general, I think, although council opines and gives us their recommendation, I think the Board of Education and administration have to find creative ways to skirt around the legal opinion and try to bring in, say it publicly, yeah, we have to find a better way. So, if it's going to be banners on the football field, if it's going to be surrounding districts where their school calendar is sponsored by a corporation, if there's ways like that that we can investigate to try to figure out how to offset our costs, I think it's Board of Education's, right to do so. And if we get a slap on the wrist from council for doing that, but we backfill those financial gaps, I mean, we can't speak for the board, but I'm going to take a slap on the wrist. I think those are some areas that we're going to be trying to figure out how to increase, financial revenue, as well as looking at opportunities to negotiate stronger contracts, as we said, with transportation. That's a huge one. It's about almost $6 million of our budget. So if we can continue to hold the line with our current transportation provider, or another provider that comes forward, if we can negotiate even lower, that's opportunities for us to have cost savings. Things of that nature are ways that we can explore.
And about contracts, we're in year 1 of the literacy program. How many years is that in total?
5-year contract.
5-year contract. Is it something you can tell us in terms of how much the cost is for that program?
We don't have that number, we can have someone reach out to you tomorrow and get you that exact number.
Okay, I'm just curious.
But I can tell you, I mean, it was, the program itself was at no cost to the district to pilot it, correct?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
The literacy program that we just adopted, what is the cost associated with that over the next 5 years?
I don't want to speak incorrectly, I believe it's around 300, yeah, I believe it's around between $300,000 and $350,000. We're able to spread it over a 5-year period. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris Jacoby, president and thank you for that, by the way. I was the middle school lacrosse coach this year. Just want to talk about the tax bill, next statements, no questions per se. Since I'm a younger parent in the district. A little closer. Oh, sorry. There we go. Okay. As a younger parent in the district with young children, just want to point out, I also have a business degree, concentration in finance, so I have a little background in banking history as well, 17 years. The tax bill in the last 5 years has already gone up about $2,500 in mine alone. So the calculation on the website is a little misleading in that we don't know what the town of Huntington is going to assess our homes at, right? With inflation and everything going on, we don't know. And, you know, the increased value already, who knows if that's going to stop, right? That could go up. Yes, you can kill your taxes and things like that. In terms of the reductions to staff, especially at the elementary level, myself and the whole block in our area, I know, has completely turned over. A lot of young families with young kids. So to have that reduction in the elementary school would be really big for those families. I just feel there might be an influx of kids, you know, in the coming years. And then lastly, with athletics, you know, to have the cuts to the athletic programs would be devastating. I just want to make that fact. And then the last thing is, you know, being a business manager or a CEO, you know, you have to control what you can control, right? If I can't increase the revenue of my company, I can certainly cut costs, you know, in other ways. So, just wanted to make those statements. Yeah.
Good evening, Kelly Fulkianos, parent, resident, and I have a daughter at Boyd, and my younger daughter is going to Harley next year. I'm super excited. I did want to first say thank you, Ms. Uncle, for all of your presentations and your information these past few months, and for coming up with an alternative for the next step. It's concerning to know that, like, we've had to go to a contingency to revote again on our school budget. To lose athletics and some of the arts programs, and to lose teachers and have larger class sizes, it's concerning for this year and long term. And I know obviously the board is doing everything that they can to make, you know, the best education for our students. I was wondering about the security reductions, and if there could be, I forget what word you use on the separate side, but like the
Non-contingent?
yeah, maybe the non-contingent items. Is all of our security considered a non-contingent?
I would say no, because the only thing is, when you're dealing directly with the safety of students and staff, some of those monies would have to be included in the budget. When we're talking about the security reductions, we're looking at different pieces of it. So we have armed guards, we have unarmed guards, we have security administration. So we're looking at those categories to see where we could make some reductions without it actually directing our security program.
And that would be part of the vote for the first vote?
for the?
Yes.
Okay. So there could be a reduction in security in that vote, and then a further reduction if we had to go to the contingency budget?
Right, so we had, when you go, another caveat, when you go to contingency budget, is there's a certain portion, the administrative component of the contingency budget has to stay within a certain percentage. So that has to be part of the puzzle that we have to figure out.
Okay.
I'm hoping not to have to do that, going to contingency, but yes.
And if we had to go to contingency, we would lose the opportunity to have like the dance schools, the dance competitions, which is what brings us in revenue?
Yes. I mean, the only way to run it would be at a zero expense to the district. And in order for us to do that, we would have to charge much more money. I don't know if it's something that they would entertain.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Bashmir Pascal Turner, resident. Mr. Tomeo, you mentioned getting sponsorship for the printing of the district calendars. Is that something we're going to do again this year?
As far as the district covering the cost of the calendar,
Yes.
I believe that's in the budget, correct? Yes. It's about
So-
$10,000, correct me if I'm wrong. Hold on one second. I want to say it's around $10,000 item.
Sorry.
The school calendar to mail or distribute to every resident is approximately how much money?
I believe it's between 8 and 10,000. Yeah.
So that currently is still in the budget.
So, as opposed to the district printing out and distributing the calendars, why is it not being given back to the PTA to do as a fundraiser, as it has been done for years?
Was in the past, I mean, prior to the PTA taking it on, it was always distributed to every resident in the district. It's one of the reasons that the Board of Education supported it going back to being a district paid line item, was because it guaranteed the distribution that every resident in the district received the calendar, and in that calendar is the information of school closures, phone numbers, phone numbers to the PTA, or district administration. So it's one of the only means that we have to distribute to every single resident. And for this budget cycle and various other budget cycles, community members who don't have children in the district felt very strongly about receiving the calendar because that is a lifeline to the school district. So
But extra copies were always given to district and they never distributed them all. So,
correct. And those residents know that they're at district office to come pick up, which we put in the newsletter, we've done that. They just aren't plugged in to come get them. So unfortunately,
so we're going to spend that $10,000 for a few residents that won't go pick up calendars in district, basically.
if it's a few residents, I mean, I don't know how to specifically,
Because we
know
can-
how many people get them or not, but we do know that when we do mail it out, every resident does get a calendar. And as far as
Is
the
it go-
$8,000 component, every money counts in the budget, but the Board of Education weighed out the pros and cons of $8,000 in a $70 million budget, and we factored it to be that it was more beneficial to make sure every resident had that, as far as a means of communication than not.
Okay.
So if the Board of Education wants to consider the $8,000 line item for the calendar to go back to PTA, that is definitely something they can consider this evening.
And I'm not going to go off of Facebook, I hate the whole Facebook thing, but just general consensus of a lot of people, people didn't mind paying the, what was it, $10 for the calendar. And it was the PTA's, one of the council's largest fundraiser, and they were able to do a lot with that money. So taking the calendar away from council was taking away things that council was able to do for the kids. So it's, again, I go back to the few residents that just won't go to district office to pick up calendar that's there, and at the end of the year, those extras that are there for the people to pick up for free go in the garbage, as opposed to spending that $10,000 that we don't have.
100%. It's a conversation the board can entertain this evening to see if they want to have that reduction of that line item within this budget. Thank you.
is Sharon McCormick. I have 3 kids in the district from high school to Boyd. Just one clarification on one of the slides of the cuts and the additional cuts. So between admin and teachers, you're not exactly sure where what's getting cut, just the amount of money that's getting cut?
That's correct.
I understand taxes are high, but this is Long Island. I'm sorry. They're high in every district. We are at a disadvantage because our cap is low, and we've stayed under the cap for the last 5 years. So I get it. I don't want to see stuff cut. We should not cut buses to a competition, I'm sorry. I love if we could cut buses. My son has 10 kids on his bus. There's nobody taking the bus. That, I understand legally you have to get, figuring out if you're able to be opt out of busing, because my kid in high school doesn't take the bus. But you have to give him a spot. I wish you didn't have to because he doesn't take it. And things like that. I would just like to see more clarification on the admin and the teachers of what's getting cut and the effect of our kids. I understand we have to hire an AP, we have to hire a principal, and I understand that, and even in the private sector, the jobs don't go away if you fire 5 people, because it just gets divided the people that are there. But maybe giving stipends to some people to do some other roles to alleviate some things that have to be on the AP at the high school to go to the middle school. Just saying, like, I wish more clarification on what is actually getting cut. I thought we would have had a little bit more of that today, but I understand you're still trying to figure the puzzle out. But I'd just like to see more clarification. That's it, thank you.
So the budget forum, after the Board of Education adopts the levy amount tonight at the forum, we'll have a little more clarity as to the position. Tonight it's more about putting forth what the budget adoption will look like, and then from there, the administration will be tasked to backfill and figure out those positions and that puzzle. It's hard to say publicly that the high school math teacher today is not going to have a job tomorrow without going and understanding what the allotment is going to be for our budget. So once we have that at the forum on the 9th,
We've been blessed. I tell people that live and work in other districts, I'm like, oh yeah, I have 20 more kids in my 3rd grade class. They're like, really? I'm like, I love that we can do that because they get more one-on-one time. So the smaller classes and the younger grades, it makes a difference. But you can't have 40 kids in a high school class because they're overwhelmed. So I don't envy you guys your job. I thank you for everything. Just
because our first residence remark portion has gone over 30 minutes, I do have to make a motion. I have a motion to extend it. Mrs. Weiss, seconded by Dr. Siddiqui. All in favor, 5-0. We are extending our residence remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Melissa Danowski. I'm a taxpayer and I have 2 children in the district. One thing that was mentioned that I just want to raise as a concern, it was the reference to maybe slightly increased class sizes. And again, just, echoing some of what the other parents have said, I understand you have a really difficult job. I thank you, all of you, for all of your work in finding creative ways to, maneuver the budget and really put the students first. So that I see that in the new budget proposal, and I thank you, and I just urge you to all keep that in mind going forward. And because this is live streamed, I do want to implore all of everybody here, first of all, thank you, everyone listening, that me, like so many others in the district, others that have spoken before me, have chosen this school district and chosen to raise our families here and buy houses here, not because of the neighborhood itself, but in large part because of the schools and all of the great education that our children are receiving. So this is so important. I'm so disappointed the budget failed the first time, not by much. So I really, ask our community members on behalf of myself, other parents, and our students who do not yet have a voting opportunity to really just, think of them as we're all coming out, preparing the budget and voting for it this time around. Thank you.
Hi, Maureen Mulder, resident. We have a question, consensus over here.
would be with the 2.64 increase, and then the reduction with tax levy of 1.29. So from 829 to 1.5 million, where would the cuts be?
You were talking about the dollar amount or the positions?
Positions.
The positions. You're looking from where we currently are at the 2.64?
Yeah.
To where we get to
Just
1.29?
after what the tax
So
cap.
if you want to go to that slide that demonstrates where the additional reductions would be. I believe in this one. Correct, okay.
Ms. Muller, is that what you were looking for? Or
From here to 1.29. Correct, so there's 1.29 reduction. That's part of the contingent, we went right to the contingent.
Yeah, we don't have the difference between the 264 and the 1.29, sorry.
But the dollar amount.
The dollar amount is there.
For
Yes.
reductions.
Right.
Yes.
And that, is that because if, that's just assuming that we're going to go forward with the 2.6?
Actually, legally, I have to present a budget, so that was the budget that I'm recommending is a 2.64. But the board has the option of doing 264 or any number really, or they can choose to go to the cap, which is 1.29. If we were to go to 1.29, the dollar difference is roughly $700,000 between that and where we are tonight.
But we don't know specifically where that 700 would really be broken down at this point.
Correct. I mean, I would imagine some of the reductions we're proposing on the contingent would be some of those items.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Dunkel, could you pull up the contingent budget? So these reductions would be where we get to through our contingent. So any of these would be fair game to look at if we had to get from the 2.64 to the 1.29, and the dollar amount roughly about
About 700 change.
$700,000. Within there, we'd have to figure out, maybe it's 2 teaching positions, I'm arbitrarily speaking, obviously, but we would have to figure out where we'd like to make further reductions. If that's the will of the board to go further down to 1.29, that would be the marching orders for the administration to then go in and eliminate further.
So I'm just curious, we barely have trips as is. Does that mean that, what is it, 7,000? Does that mean that we wouldn't pretty much have trips? The kids barely do much.
That would be the transportation of the buses. We could still have trips, but we might have to say it's $5 per student for transportation if we were going to an off-site field trip.
Okay.
Any other questions from the community? All right, and thank you all for speaking prior to the board being able to have the conversation. I think it helps us understand the pulse of the community and allow us the opportunity to hear your questions and comments. Board of Education at this point, we have several options. I don't think going right to contingent is an option for us, although it's presented. But we do have a budget with a decent amount of reductions from where we put the previous budget out. Ms. Dunkel has a 2.64 budget in front of us. I think it's important for the Board of Education to have a conversation as far as whether or not we're comfortable with where we are at this budget. We want to see a further reduction, or we want to go to the cap. I will go right down the line, Mr. Edwards.
Good evening. As everybody talking, I would like to see a number that we all are comfortable at. I don't want to get rid of anything, any programs, anything athletic for the kids. At the same time, I don't want to get rid of any positions either. That hurts the kids as well. Eliminating more positions hurts the kids. So we get a number that's comfortable for all of us. we should stay at that, and the community will help us get there. So let's get to a number that we're all comfortable with, if we can.
Mr. Scroll?
Thank you, Mr. Tomio. Yeah, this has been quite challenging for us. You know, we love Elwood. 4 out of 5 of us graduated here from Elwood. I've been here since 1986. We've had good times, we've had bad times. We don't have a tax base. We're small but mighty. We make a lot out of a little. You know, we're very lucky. I was raised here. My children are being raised here. My parents worked here. We love Elwood, and this has been very difficult for all of us. I'm very comfortable. I'm not really comfortable with anything, but I'm comfortable at the 2.64 because it does preserve almost all of our programming. I think it's a fair compromise for taxpayers, for all constituents that live in our community. And I feel if we go any lower, it will take us, as the resident mentioned, years and years to recover. Because unfortunately, the tax cap formula, I know it's very hard to understand, is not very good for us because on paper they say we're this really wealthy area, and you know, they don't give us a high number. We were 1.29 this year, which is nothing. So I don't think we should go to 1.29. I believe in Elwood, I believe in our community. I'm very hopeful that they will come out so we can really preserve as much of Elwood as we can. You know, I bought my current house in 2017 and it's already pretty much increased by 65%. Since I've been a board member here, we've made no cuts at all. We've only increased. We've had opportunities as a board to go to the cap, which was way above 2%, and we've always been responsible. Since I've worked with this board, we've never gone above the cap. This is the first year that we had to go above the cap. So, like I said, I think we've almost made $2 million in cuts to get to this 2.64, and I don't feel that we need to go any lower. So I'm comfortable, Mr. Tomio, at a 2.64 budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scroll. Dr. Stevens?
Thank you, Ms. Dunkel, for your presentation. Yeah, this has been a difficult time for all of us. I want to thank the community members that are here. I want to thank the community that's watching for really, putting in the required effort to make sure that we do the best for our kids, for our community, for our schools. And I want to remind everyone that the 4.2 budget that we came out with initially already had cuts. We worked hard. We've been working hard all year. We knew that this was coming. We've been talking about the fiscal cliff, the financial cliff. We're going to lose the grants. We're going to lose our funding. We're borrowing from our reserves for the past 5 years. We knew this was coming. We put forth the best budget that we could, and I understand that it didn't pass, but we are still having to go out piercing the cap again. It's because we can't cut anymore. Even this 2.64, I wanted to go above that. I am very concerned about the future of our district. I also love our district. I have 3 graduates from the district. I have a 10th grader. I believe that we're doing great things in our schools, and I want to continue that for all of the future children that will be coming, that are in the district. I want my kids to live here, and I believe in us, and I really think that we have worked hard with all of you, our administration, our staff. We're doing the best for our kids, and we do a lot with a little. We always say that. We have a public school with private school attendance, or we have small class sizes, we have one-to-one tutoring, we have a fabulous academic intervention services. We can't lose any of that. We don't want to lose field trips. We don't want to lose sports. So, with the 4.2 that we dropped 414,000, we did cut, and now with this new budget, 2.64, we're dropping another total of another $800,000. And we can't afford to keep cutting, and we can't afford to go to contingency. I am pleading and just, I truly want to even go higher than the 2.64, but I think if, I understand that our community is hurting and we really have to support our community, but our school is an investment in our community, it's an investment in our homes. Just like we bought in this area and in this district as an investment, the school is also an investment. Whether you have children in the district or not, the school is an investment for you, for us. There are some things that we're going to need to do for the next year, for the next 5 years, and we're going to probably talk about a whole 5-year plan at some point. But I urge our residents and our community members to get together, write letters to your local electeds, have them renegotiate the tax formula. Having a 1.28% on us as a cap, it's because we're considered a wealthy district. We need to reframe that whole workaround. We pay a large majority of our taxes even goes to Albany and goes and funds upstate New York. It doesn't even come back to Long Island. So we need to hold accountable our elected officials. We need to talk to them to make sure they reformulate the tax formula. We also have to look at our transportation and make sure that we try to figure out a way. All our buses are going around empty. Maybe we can figure out a way to save money there. We also, because our bond is up, or we don't have a current bond, we don't have, now correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Dunkel, but because we don't have any debt service, and we don't have a current bond, that also lowered our tax cap, correct?
That's not entirely accurate. We still have debt on our books from the 2017 bond. We have probably another 8 to 10 years, depending on the portion when we borrowed it. But they say it's a good thing for school districts to have debt. So our debt is going down slightly each year, so that does lower the tax cap as part of our capital exclusion, so that's accurate. In addition to that, we have school districts go out for bonds typically to address their infrastructure and problems that they're having. So there are still a lot of needs that need to be addressed within the school district. So a bond in the future is something we'll be looking at as well. Not next year, but a bond in the near future.
Yes, so that is also something that can increase our tax cap eventually. And we also have to start charging use for our fields, our facilities. We're gonna unfortunately have to charge our community or the outside community to use our facilities. And I think all of these things have to have the community input, and we need everybody to band together, because even with this 2.64, or I would prefer to go even higher than that if the board is comfortable discussing that, because I think we owe our kids a strong education and a strong, we need to make sure that we're also investing in the future. And by cutting, it's going to take us 5 to 10 years to recover. Some of these positions that we're losing 10 teachers, we're only replacing the 4. You're going to pay for that later. And it's going to take 5 to 10 years to get back to where we were. If we lose an AP position, or we're not going to replace somebody, we're going to lose some directors, they're doing the jobs of 2 people already. And so if you're going to lose those positions and not replace them, you're going to benefit maybe for this year, but in the long run, it's going to come back to bite you, or bite us, because I will still be here, and hopefully my kids are going to still be here, and we really need to invest in our community. So I encourage my colleagues to maybe even go higher if that's possible, but I understand that we're also worried that we don't want a contingency budget. That's the last thing. If we have to if you want to decimate the school district, contingency budget is going to do that, and then it'll take even longer than a decade to recover. But I really applaud my fellow board members for being here night after night and really long discussions. I have a job too, and we all do. But this is volunteer work for all of us. We don't get paid. I know we keep saying that we should get a raise, and I get a raise every year. I joke around, but I really have to clarify that, yeah, we get a raise every year, but that's like out of the labor of love. And, I implore my fellow colleagues to, maybe we can go a little bit higher, but this is the consensus. I will agree with them. And I thank everybody for being here tonight. Thank you.
Start, Mr. just like, real quick before you go, I totally forgot to say something. Also, it was really nice to see some new young parents here tonight, and I just urge you not to believe everything you read on social media. As board members, our phone numbers are listed publicly. Please call us if you have questions. A lot of the people that have been saying negative things about us on Facebook are not in the room tonight. So please, Facebook is great, but it's not everything you think it is. So please contact your teacher, contact the superintendent, call us, we'll explain everything. But I think sometimes the Facebook message isn't accurate. So I'm so lucky that we saw some new faces tonight. I encourage more of these young families to come out, let their voices be heard. But once again, I personally don't respond to social media, but you can call me anytime and we can have a nice chat. So thank you again for the new family showing up tonight. Thanks, Tess.
Your phone number for the record, Mrs. Scroll?
Yeah, listen.
Well, good evening. It's definitely tough times, and I appreciate all my fellow board members' comments and, Sarah's comments, specifically. The last thing that we want to affect, we want to be student focused. That's what we're here for. That is our objective. But we also want to keep the community that, 4 of the 5 of us grew up in, and realizing that that community is economically diverse. And we, again, thank you for reelecting me. And when I stood out there on election day and I heard people in desperation coming to me because they grew up in this community, they want to live in this community, they want their kids to go to school in this community, and they want the quality of education that their kids have had. And I grew up in this community. I attended John Glenn and Elwood all throughout, and my kids have done the same thing, and they've gotten great opportunities. My last one is graduating in May. And so we want to have that balance. And so I'm looking, at the budget, and I definitely don't want to have the services that affect the students most directly to be cut. But we need to make some cuts. I am very concerned, especially after listening and speaking to probably almost 100 people on election day, and their input that a 2.64 may not pass because it's a supermajority. And the people that are in this room are all the people that I've worked beside, and we are all people who, are pretty much yes votes, and we know the value, and we see our kids here. And I'm not saying that the people who are no votes don't know the value. They're in a different position. So I would like to see it go a little bit lower. That would be my thing. I think a little bit lower. 1.29 to me is infeasible. Okay, and I just think it would just decimate programs. We wouldn't be able to recoup from that. I'm a little concerned about the 2.64. I have to be honest with you. It's optical. I think we heard you about certain positions about being top heavy. The admin has been offering immense creative solutions throughout the past 2 weeks. They've been working nonstop, and I really do commend them for that. I think we need to look at some of the things, that don't affect students directly. And, the calendars. Maybe because I was a PTA person, I know we're going to get this. I think the calendar should go back to the PTA. I think that's money that automatically should go in. When I was council president back in the day, we made them available at the Elwood Public Library, and I told the librarians, here, when somebody comes in, I would have people call me and say, well, I don't have kids in the district, I want a calendar. Okay, I called the district clerk, right, and I would make sure that they would get a calendar. So I really think that $10,000 can go to a program. I would much rather see somebody pay for a calendar than cut an AIS position. I'm sorry. Academic intervention serves every child, whether they are a child who is getting on the top end or a child on the lower end. They are a service that I feel is absolutely necessary, and I wouldn't cut. Some of these things we don't know what the total budget is. And looking at professional development, I'm not going to go line by line, but this is something that pointed out. We took out $7,000 in a proposed reduction of professional development. I'd like to know what that budget is. What's the total for that budget? And I'm not saying no, but look at that. Is $7,000 a good percentage, or is that 2% of the budget? And then I would say, well, maybe we need to increase that a little bit more. I would look at, I was at the flag football game, and there were 3 yellow jackets, which are our people that go security, 3 or 4 of them. Do we need 3 or 4 of them? Again, I don't know, that's Dave, that's something that really, maybe we need to look at that. Again, not to take away from a program and look at other areas that we can cut. And that's where I come from, because again, I sat there and I listened to people, and I always laugh when I say, I'm just a tuna fish. And that's fine, I'm willing to make that sacrifice, but some people cannot afford their mortgage, and they can't, and you say, well, you picked Elwood to live in, but they picked Elwood to live in 40 years ago. I've been here, I think I'm 31 years, and I came in and I gave up my career so that I could raise my kids, and my taxes, at that time, my total taxes were $8,200. My school taxes are ridiculous now. And I'd love to say I'm going to be here as long as Sarah and have my kids live here, but I don't know that that's feasible. And we don't want to have a community that's like that. But we also want a community that's going to give our children the best opportunity. So I encourage everybody to go out to their neighbors, talk to your neighbors, talk to the people around you. I have taken phone calls, I have answered emails, I have Facebook messages of people who have asked me a question, and I will go down, giving them information. The board is not allowed to promote a yes vote or a no vote, but we can by all means give you, and if we don't have the answers, we will find those answers and get back to you, because we want an educated voter. And so we want you to realize what your value is. People will say the real estate value. I am, and I said this at previous meetings, I am selling my mother's house, or will be, and the difference in the cost differential by being in this district is several $100,000 more than if we were in a neighboring district. And the realtor said to me, that's because you're in Elwood and the value of the Elwood School District. So we are looking at things. We are looking at transportation contract is ending. We are looking at restructuring that transportation, the zones and whatever. The problem that you get when we did a survey several years ago, because we had, nobody rides the buses, and especially the high school kids. And what came back, you guys were talking about this, what came back was that even though that person's kid never rode a bus, they'll say, well, I'm entitled to that. I pay my taxes for that, so I don't want to give that up. So we have to kind of figure out solutions and maybe get out of that mentality also. We all have to look at what's important to us and what we can afford to give up. If we can afford to have great field trips, but pay for the buses to get there, and that saves us so that we can have some programs that are going to really help our kids in the classroom academically, then that's something that we all need to look at and consider. So I think I addressed everything, and I thank you guys for all the work. It's just, it is a lot.
Thank you twice, and thank you to the board. Just a few remarks from myself. I don't want to be redundant, but I want to speak about the fiscal outlook of our district. We've been in positions where we've been in moderate distress. We've been in positions where we're ranked by Moody's in a fairly good ranking. With this budget, we're already deficit spending $3.8 million. That's in addition to the $2 million that we're currently seeing in reductions. So to sit here and not think that it's going to impact the children, it will, right? Every bit of our reductions do impact the children. And I think the administration has done a nice job, so I do want to, thank you well-balanced reduction, right? We're not seeing a pointed reduction in teachers. That's usually the first spot that people start seeing reductions in. We did that through attrition, kudos to the board, we put an incentive through the last contract to try to get teachers to retire, knowing that this was the fiscal cliff that we were going to inevitably be facing. It's just not enough, right? 1.29 would be another $800,000. So we're in a position where we have to figure out how to balance what a budget would look like that the community will support and a budget that's going to be sustainable year after year. So we're looking at a 5-year outlook and we're deficit spending currently. And we're already reducing our staffing. We're already reducing our administration. And we're reducing transportation. And we're reducing. It's very hard to bring back. It's very hard after you give something away to say, I want it. So with that being said, I don't support a 1.29 budget. I think we have no choice but to go higher than that amount. But I do hear Ms. Weiss's comment that the optic of it, are we going to be in a position to get 60% of voter approval? Because anything over 1.29 requires 60% of our voters. I think that's a hard sell for this community. I think every time we pierce the cap, it's been twice in the last at least decade, both times have failed. This community speaks. We put up a turf field, the community spoke. So our voters are ones who are actively participating in our election process and our voting process, our budget process. Although we don't see the audience packed, there's over 100 people watching from home tonight. So thank you to those people who are engaging. That's not usually the case. We tasked this administration to get out there, put a road show on, to get in front of our community. There was 4 different forums. Aggregately between all 4 forums, we had no more than 30 people attend. The budget failed. Were we informed? We're not informed. We can sit here and go back and forth and argue from one pulpit to the next. We're not sure what the reason was. Is it inflation? Is it cost factors? Is it a simple optic of 2.0 being at what they think a cap is, or being at 1.29 where the cap actually is? Whether the tax cap formula is broken or configured in a way that is disadvantage to the old school district, we can sit here and we can point fingers and we can talk about reductions and creative ways to bring in revenue. But at the end of the day, we have to put a budget forth before this community. And we got to put one, before everybody that's palatable. And that's for the young families, that's for the families who are phased out with children in the district, and those are ones who are fixed incomes and Social Security. It's not easy. And this Board of Education didn't sit here and put a 4.20 thinking that everybody could support that. We put one forth that was minimal to the reductions at that time. So going forward, we're still reducing, and we're deficit spending to the tune of almost $6 million. Show me a corporation that cuts $6 million and still gives an amazing product or amazing productivity. The Elwood School District continues to do more with less. And the administration came to the Board of Education and said, I can do that. I can do that. That's the team that we have in place here. They're going to do more. They're going to take on more ownership roles. They're going to share the workload. Our teachers are getting creative with administration to say, I'll go from Boyd to Harley to go back for a position. That's the culture of the Elwood community. So, yes, don't envy us. It's a very hard position tonight, but we don't envy you either, because whatever we put forth, we have the hope that you support it. So, with that being said, going down the line, I don't know if I have everybody kind of where we need to be. That's why I wanted to see possibly a little bit further reductions. Dr. Speaker wants to see possibly an increase at the 2.64 to not have as many reductions. Mrs. Scarrolla, you were comfortable at the 2.64. And Mr. Edwards?
I'm comfortable with the 2.64.
At the 2.64. Okay. Any objections to the calendar being cut for $10,000? Well, I know it's not a huge savings, but any objections to the calendar or back to the PTA?
I have a comment about that, Mr. Tomio. We do have a large amount of residents that no longer have children in the district. Like I said, Elwood's a great place. A lot of people decided to stay with the cost of inflation and home prices. I do think we have a large, super important part of our community that wants their voice to be heard. And I do worry that, I have no problem getting into the PTA, whatever fundraisers, I'm a big fan of fundraisers. I just don't want to leave out any resident who doesn't know what's going on in the schools. And that was the issue we had about bringing it back in-house, was because there are more than you think residents. We have about 10,000 residents in Elwood, and, I don't know exact numbers are, but I would hate to lose those people that really want to be connected. And you can say pick it up at the district office, and that sounds great, but I don't know how many senior citizens will come and pick them up. I think it's a disservice not to give a calendar to everybody in the district. I don't know if there's a way to compromise where anyone that buys a calendar, we can mark them off and just mail out one. I just don't want to exclude anybody that lives in this community, whether they have children or not. So I'm not comfortable myself at this time saying, let's give it back to the PTA, just because, I don't want to leave any resident behind.
So the Elwood community has approximately 3,400 houses. So that's how many calendars approximately go out. It's about 3,400.
And how many have the PTA sold in the past? I guess I would need to look at that. I don't feel comfortable myself making a decision about that currently.
Okay. So
Something, personally, that's just me, I'm one person.
I think once we adopt a number, that comes up in conversation with the Board of Education to give a marching order to remove the distribution of the calendars. I'll let you know, I guess, as far as that goes. Unless anybody has any other comments on the calendars they want to add tonight. Dr. Siddiqui?
I think the calendars were being printed by the PTA for many, many years. I know when I first moved into the district, that was how the PTA made one of its biggest fundraisers, and they would sell not only the calendar, they would sell the pocket calendars and I miss the pocket calendars, so maybe the PTA we can compromise and they can sell the pocket calendars, because I love those things. Yes, yes, I would buy 3 or 4, have one in every car, and so while I appreciate Mr. Scrolla's comments, I really think that if we had, a portion of calendars sit at the library even, or I know the library even has programs where they deliver books, so those families that get the books delivered because they can't come to the library, they can get some calendars. So I think, I agree with Ms. Weiser, I agree with our community members to give it back to the PTA, because I think it was a fabulous fundraiser.
Comments on the calendar? I'll just comment. I was blessed. My grandfather, we were able to take care of him up until he was almost 90, and I got to be in contact with many residents who were within that age group. Mr. Freed, rest his soul, used to call me the octogenarian whisperer. I always spoke to the old people and the elder, and their comment was always they couldn't wait to get the calendar in the mail. It was an immediate connection to the school that they didn't have in 40 years, or maybe they didn't know that the senior citizen, theater program was taking place in February, and that gave them a reason to come and be engaged with our students. Or they didn't know what homecoming was, so they were able to show up to the homecoming parade or the football game because of it. So, for me, if it was $100,000 for printing, I would say let's have a conversation. But for $10,000 and an $80 million budget, to have a marketing tool that gets in front of every single home, to me, I think it's not worth it personally. I'm great with the pocket ones. I think we should explore possibly if we can get sponsorships. The Elwood Athletic Club does their sports camps. Maybe the Elwood Athletic Club can take out a portion of the agenda. The Booster Club does something. Maybe they can take out a way to promote within the calendars, within districts. Local businesses maybe can put their information on the back cover, and we can do something to backfill that $10,000. But I think it's important that every resident gets one.
Okay, just one more, and then I don't want to go calendar crazy. First off, we have highlights. So our community members get that bulletin 4 times a year. How many times a year do you get that? Okay, and that's their connection to the community. So I get that they look forward to the calendar, but I also hear a lot of residents like, oh my God, I'm paying for this, I got a calendar, I don't have kids in the school district, who wants an extra calendar? I see it on Facebook all the time. Point number 2. Point number 3 is a lot of times that calendar, and in all respect to the PTA, because I've sat in those meetings where we're fighting over the dates, a lot of times those dates aren't solidified, so the majority of stuff I have to go online. We're in a different stage now, and I realize, my mother didn't even have a phone, or would go online, she wouldn't look, everything was hard copy. But they're not getting 100% of the stuff that's going on because a lot of it now is fluid and is online. So with that said, that's just, bringing it to something that's further discussion. I don't think we have to end it, do it here. What I did want to make a point is that when we go to contingency, okay, the roof construction that's being done is going to be done regardless because it's a safety and health thing. So that's automatically going to be done. There's not an option to cut that out. If we were to cut the roof out, our tax cap would be much lower. I think it would be negative, correct, Lorraine? Okay, so, because that was one of my first things. Cut the roof out, make a repair, let's push it off a couple of years. I don't want to lose programs for that. And I had to get educated on that. So I want people to understand that. So in contingent, the roof still gets done, but maybe the sports aren't there or the music isn't there, because those are not non-contingent items. The second thing I want to make people aware of is we're tapping into our savings, and we've been doing it to lessen the blow of the taxes, the tax levy. When you go to contingent, there is no ability to do that, correct? Right? We can't go into our savings. We can't use our reserves.
No, it won't change from what we're currently proposing, correct?
Right. So that money that we put in there for this year to bring it down a little bit is not going to be there, and we have to recoup that additional amount that we would have used our savings for. Am I correct in that?
I think what you're saying, the allocation of the reserves and the fund balance that's utilized in the budget would still be utilized in the budget.
Correct, but it wouldn't be increased to offset the contingency.
So what we're proposing now is our final, the good old college try, as I said, that this is our final thing. If this doesn't pass, there is no option other than going to contingent. And I want people to understand that. And when we go to contingent, we don't have any sort of cushion. We have to make those cuts. That's my
Comment?
So, yes, I understand that the 2.64 is what Lorraine or Ms. Dunkel has currently proposed, and I continue just to be very concerned about all this reduction. So we reduced another $829,000 from the budget, whereas the 4.2 budget was $414,000, right? The 4.2.
And the 4.2 was at about 1.2 million.
1.2. So 4.2 budget was 1.2 million, and now we're doing another 800,000 with the 2.64. My concern is how long is it going to take us to recuperate all these losses that we keep slashing? I mean, now we're not even doing the scalpel anymore. We're really like doing a machete to the budget. So, because the past couple of years we would always say, oh, we're doing a scalpel, we're just doing a scalpel, but now this is a machete. And so my concern is our 5-year plan and how we're going to recoup this. So that's why I'm encouraging my board, although we're at the 2.64, if there's any possible way we can even go a little bit higher so we're not slashing and dashing so much. Because the next 5 years we're going to continue to be paying for this. We're going to have the same conversation, next year and the year after that, I'm concerned about.
And Dr. Steve, if I may, we've had this conversation for the last 7 years. We've been deficit spending year after year after year. We're backfilling more deficit spending, and that cycle is kind of how Elwood operates, unfortunately. You're never going to get additional revenue in the way that it's going to keep up with the outpacement expenses. That's the unfortunate situation. So what's also unique about Elwood is that cost goes out to the taxpayers. That's why you're seeing your taxes go up year after year. So it's our purview to sit here and make those cuts and get to that number to kind of mitigate and slow down the expense to the taxpayer. And as fiduciaries of the community, that's the hard balance. It's finding out how to give the education to compete with the Goldsmith Harbor and the harbor fields that everybody expects, but also be responsible to the taxpayer. It's hard. It's hard to want to be here but pay here. And that's kind of where we're at. And we've been used to getting here by paying here by doing more with less. But we've come to the point, and the cap was just an inevitable disaster situation for us this year, 1.29. Our lowest contract with our bargaining units is more than 1.29. Cost of living is, I don't know where it's at this point, 7, 8%, whatever it may be. So no matter what we do, I think to answer your question, or at least to add to your point, is when you reduce, you're not getting it back. But not without increasing some type of revenue to pay for what you get rid of. But we've also been doing a really nice job of not going to the cap, continuing to keep where we're at, and enhancing our program. Whether we did that through creation of grants or from, getting creative with positions and consolidating and moving things around, we've done that. But there's only so much we can do for the puzzle. So at this point, in my opinion, the edges are done with the puzzle, the inside of the puzzle is done, you have one piece left, and that's to give it to the taxpayers to go done. And I personally don't feel comfortable going higher than 2.64. I think, for going to Ms. Weiss's point, the optic, and we've done this year after year, we fight over a number to what we think is going to be digestible by the community. For me, I think we were at that 3.9, which was below the 4.2. We were going back and forth with that number because we thought that the optic would look better for the community. So if we're going into that scope because it failed the budget, I would say go 2.49. That's where I'm at.
What's that difference?
$80,000. Oh, sorry, which was thought.
The difference between 264 and 249.
249. So 10 point 500, at 80.
I'd say it's about $80,000.
I don't know, I'm not comfortable with that, because, I'm already uncomfortable with the 3.6 teacher positions. When you reduce teachers, that's increased class sizes. That's what you're doing. When you're cutting 3.6 teachers, that's 240, and then adding another 70 to 80, that's almost $300,000 that you might be cutting teacher positions, and that's a direct.
Cutting teachers. But then you gotta look at across
I think we're not cutting, we're just not fulfilling those teaching positions. We're not cutting teachers at this point. Where through attrition, we're not filling in, yes, it's going to increase class size.
That's the
100%.
thing, you were using them, they were there, and now you're not using them,
I
and
think we also
so.
watch the trend lines, class sizes declining. I don't think the administration put forth the reduction in staff that's going to, obviously outpace where we are with our contractual obligations and put us in a position where our children aren't going to be receiving an adequate education. Obviously, we want the best for our students, our children. But if we don't pass the budget, you're going to see additional staffing positions cut.
If I may interject, I think 2.64 is a good number to be at. You also have to realize that they're dismantling our Department of Education. Elwood receives approximately $2 million for special education services. If the departmental dismantles, then that money goes to the states, and the states decide who gets that. So there's another possibility of us losing an additional $2 million if Governor Hochul decides to not give it to us. So I think we need to hold strong at 2.64. I think that's a cut of almost $2 million. It does preserve almost all of our programming. Okay, our class sizes might go up by 1 or 2, but in the district I work in, we have elementary schools pushing 28, 29. So we have been very blessed to have classes about 21. Also, another myth that's out there is, yes, enrollment's going down, but the cost of our special education students has gone up. The cost of our ELL, English Language Learner students, have gone up. So I also get frustrated when people say, oh yeah, enrollment's down. Okay, yes, enrollment's down, but we have students that have needs, and those costs, unfortunately, are going up every year. So we can go back and forth on this, but in my opinion, I think 2.64 is a fair compromise to people that have kids in school, that people don't have kids in school, because it preserves most of our programming, and I think it's very fair to everybody, and I'm just one person, but that's where I feel comfortable with this thing.
So now roll call again. Mr. Edwards?
264.
Okay, Mrs. Sproul, we know where you are at. Dr. Siddiqui?
Yeah, I don't think I can go lower than 2.64. I would prefer to go higher, but I don't want to go lower.
Mr. Edwards or Mr. Walters, do either of you want to entertain going higher than 264? That's true, Mr. Scott. Listen, I work 3 jobs, so I'm actually, right?
Yeah, no.
Mr. Edwards and Mr. Rolla.
264, let's stay strong.
Yeah, I have no desire to go any higher.
Okay, Ms. Weiss, I'm going to do it on the other side, but the consensus of the board is at 2.64. So, administration, marching orders are to, you report the budget at 2.64. So, that is what we're going to put forth to the community.
Thank you.
With that being said, that is an action item for this evening. So be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby adopts the expenditure appropriation of $78,566,259 to operate the school for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, which requires a tax levy increase of 2.64, which exceeds the statutory tax levy limit of 1.29 for the fiscal school year, and therefore exceeds the tax cap and must be approved by 60% of the qualified voters present and voting, and be it further resolved that the following proposition shall be presented to the voters at the budget revote to be held on Tuesday, June 17, 2025. Shall the Board of Education of Union Free School District, Town of Huntington, Suffolk County, New York, be authorized to expend a sum of $78,566,259 in accordance with the budget submitted for the school year of 2025-2026, and to levy the necessary tax therefore. Adoption of the budget requires a tax levy increase of 2.64, which exceeds the statutory tax levy limit of 1.29% for this school fiscal year, and therefore exceeds the state tax cap and must be approved by 60% of the qualified voters present and voting. And be it further resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the 2025-2026 property tax report card related to the budget revote as adopted by the Board of Education at this meeting, and that the Assistant Superintendent for Business is directed to submit the property tax report card to the State Education Department by the end of the next business day following this approval. I have a motion. Motion, Dr. Siddiqui, seconded by Mrs. Weiss. Any questions or comments? We'll make one further comment. The Board of Education obviously put forth the budget, or is going to approve the budget at 2.64. Just to reiterate, that is exceeding the property tax cap of 1.29 and does require 60% of the voter approval. So we are going forward with an additional piercing of the cap that will require 60% of the eligible voters to approve the budget. If that does not happen, the Board of Education, the Elwood School District goes to a contingent or austerity budget with a 0% increase going forward. So I want to make sure that is reiterated again. All right, we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor, 5-0. Ms. Duncan, you can go forth and file tax report first, please. All right. That brings us up to our last residents' remarks for this evening. Any residents wishing to speak? My blurb from earlier today still stands, obviously.
Is this on? Hi, Marlene. Sorry, that was really loud. Marlene Costanza. I just want to say thank you for the conversation back and forth. I guess I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure many people in the community feel the same way. I appreciate the open and honest discussion. That's all. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Paul Kaplan, a 41-year resident. I appreciate what everyone said tonight. I can truly appreciate the situation you're in. But a question, Ms. Dunkel, why is it that Elwood was the only district of Long Island that needed a 4% tax levy? When every other district of Long Island did need to have to do an override. And how did we get into this position? And as Dr. Siddiqui said, we had a 5-year budget plan. So how did we find ourselves needing to do what the district had to do?
I mean, I can speak to part of it. You know, at the end of the day, Ms. Dunkel puts forth a recommendation to the Board of Education with the initial recommendation of the 4.2 budget increase. That was already having a $400,000 reduction in our budget. to the Board of Education, felt the need to try to keep program and positions and the offerings to our students status quo. And with that came, with the $400,000 reduction, a 4.2 increase. Our cap was at 1.29, so with that, no matter what we put forth, anything above 1.29 would have been piercing of the cap. As far as being the only district on Long Island, there was 3 districts that faced piercing of the caps. 2 of those districts failed, us being one of them. One did approve with 60% voter approval. And how did we find ourselves in this position? It's I'll let Ms. Dunkel speak to more of that, but it's a unfortunate situation because the Board of Education over the years did not go to the cap. We did, from COVID on, we left a lot of money, if you will, on the table. We didn't go to the cap for our community. We tried to walk that line to figure what was a palatable amount to put forth. And with those last 5 years, we passed all those budgets with 65% voter approval or more. So, as fiduciaries, we tried our best to make sure that the budgets weren't at the cap for all those years. So with that being said, that money wasn't within the budget going forward as our base. So we were already at a disadvantage. The capital exclusions, as far as the tax cap formula goes, some of our capital projects were delayed. Therefore, they didn't get calculated within our tax cap formula. So with that being part of the situation, Ms. Dunkel can speak further to this. It reduced our exclusions, therefore giving us a lower tax cap.
So, Mr. Tony, I hate to interrupt, and I appreciate it. I understand the tax cap was very low in the district. But I'm referring to the fact that our school district, Elwood, went to a 4.2% tax levy when no other school district on Long Island came close, exceeded 4%. My question is this: we're in this position tonight. There are 4 hearings now going forward to discuss what Elwood's going to do about their budget, where no other school district on Long Island has these meetings that you now have. Why is it that our district is in this position that no other school district on Long Island is? What happened to our school district?
I'll let Ms. Dunkel go further into the business side of it, but also within this budget is over $1 million in a roof repair. So,
But James, did we have a bond pass for $30 million or $50 million like 3 years ago? That's already reflected in my school tax. So I'm paying for that bond. I thought Boyd's roof would be in that bond, but now I'm told that wasn't part of it. But we passed a $30 or $50 million bond just a few years ago. So, I mean, let's not lose sight of the fact that that's also several $100s a year I'm paying in my school tax. I simply want to know, as I've said, what happened to Elwood? Why only Elwood went so high over budget where there's no one else? Now, you could say that costs went up, but every school district is in the same exact boat as our district. So what happened to our school district? Especially if we had a 5-year plan going back to the days of Bill Pastor and Peter Scordo, who we had, sat and heard about our plan. Ms. Dunkel, you've talked about a 3 to 5 year budget plan. So what happened in 25-26? What happened to our budget plan?
So the biggest factor that affected our tax cap this year, which put us at such a disadvantage, was building aid that is coming on from New York State due to the bond. And as Mr. Tonio mentioned, we had some delayed projects through COVID. So when you go out for a bond, you borrow money, you have debt, and you expect to receive building aid, and they pretty much offset one another. That's how they try to have a reduced impact when you go out for a bond, to reduce the impact on taxpayers, because there's a certain percentage you get back from New York State. So the finishing of the bond, then the bond was approved in 2017, so that was 8 years ago. Some of the projects were delayed throughout COVID, and we had a lot of issues during COVID with some of these projects, and we couldn't really nail down when we were going to be able to file the final cost reports. So some of that delay, that was, I would say, the biggest issue on top of rising costs. So that's one of the reasons we're in this position. The 5-year plan is very fluid. We make adjustments to it all the time. It's not a perfect science, But we have done our best to stay within that plan. And, I know you're saying, why Elwood, why this year? I have many colleagues who last year had to pierce the cap or gone out over 4%. Every district is unique. It's based on their own situation. Some school districts have more aid than other districts, depending on their needs. Some districts have, I know, used Northport, I think, for a few years, attempted going on to zero a few years. Every district has their own situation. So it's tough to compare us to everyone else, because we may be at 4%, but we're 4% of an $80 million budget, as opposed to 2 or 3% of a $150 million budget. So it's really hard to compare ourselves to everyone else in that particular situation. We deal with the information that we have at hand and do a 3 to 5 year forecast as best we can on what we're going to do. So that's where I would say why we're ending up in this position. One has to do with rising costs. Again, unfortunately, it's a fallout of COVID. Inflation is rising as well. Mr. Tom, you mentioned there are years we did not go to the cap, so we left money on the table. And add to that, building aid that decreased our tax cap this year is why we're in this situation.
Well, like I said, I happen to live in a school district on Long Island that had to pierce their cap. That's my school district. So I wasn't happy when I read about it. And I find myself in this position now where I look and say, what is it about the Elwood School District that no other Long Island school district is in that position? So this is just, I'm just wondering what exactly happened to our school district this particular year. Thank you.
Any of the residents wishing to address the board? See no residents. Make a motion to go back into executive session for personnel matters. Dr. Siddiqui, second by Mrs. Weiss. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We will have our next forum will be June 9th. The budget hearing will be on June 9th. Same place, same time. Thank you, everyone.